It's a nightmare you don't want. Sensitive information about your employees mishandled, opening you to the risk of lawsuits. Joining BizWise today by satellite to tell us how to manage sensitive employee data is partner and employee practice chair with the law firm Varela, Braun and Martel, Doug Dexter. Doug, welcome.
Hi, Valerie. Thanks for having me.
As a small to mid-sized business owner, what's your legal responsibility when it comes to protecting information about your employees?
What you want to do is you've got an affirmative, explicit obligation under the law to segregate certain information from your normal personnel files. So first of all, you need to keep, under the federal laws, you need to keep any medical information. That includes any information you received about the medical reasons for someone's leave of absence or the medical reasons why someone may need an accommodation at work, or the results of a drug or medical examination. You're obliged to keep those separate from the normal personnel file to which, managers would generally have access.
Yeah.
You're obliged to keep segregated from that normal personnel file any information that was used to satisfy I-9 obligations, immigration information, status information. And if you are in the practice of acquiring background checks for your applicants, for people you're considering hiring, of course there are quite a number of steps you need to go through in order to be allowed to conduct that background check. But ultimately, when you get the result of the background check, you're also obliged to keep that segregated from the personnel file. Now, just looking at the personnel file that we traditionally think of as, containing the employee's application and their performance reviews and their wage increase information and all of that type of information,
okay,
there's still a right that the employees have to the privacy even of that information. So it's important to keep even the simple personnel files with all that personal information, performance evaluation information, under lock and key and manage who has access and under what circumstances they have access to that information.
And this is on top of having to protect like social security numbers or bank account numbers for direct deposit, payroll information, that sort of thing as well?
Exactly. More and more states are passing laws specifically directed to those issues.
Okay, in the old days, what comes to mind are locked rooms, locked filing cabinets, right? In this age of electronic data, how do you replicate that?
Well, the first question really in this age of electronic data is, what is the file? Because what you'll find, particularly what we find as lawyers when we're dealing with, employment decisions that turn into litigation, is that a great deal of the file is actually in emails and is actually in communication that have been sent, warnings and so on that have been sent back and forth in the form of emails.
Yeah.
The good news about that is that through electronic means, we can much more carefully and accurately monitor and regulate the access to that information. So we can set up systems through which certain files are accessible by certain people through passwords, and there's going to be a record that demonstrates who did or did not access that information.
So how well would you say the typical owner of a small business is handling sensitive employee data?
Well, it's a challenge, of course. Frankly, there's always been a tradition within small businesses in particular of a feeling of a family. In my experience working with smaller companies, there's always going to be that tension between that desire for informality and familiarity against the sort of the modern expectations of privacy and independence.
So you'd say protective measures then are actually both for the sake of the employee and for the employer, right?
Exactly.
Useful information. Doug Dexter, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Valerie. Thanks for having me.
And for more information to reach Doug, go to fbm.com. This is BizWise TV.